In Jujutsu Kaisen, a surefire way to climb the leaderboard is to find ways to maximize your DPS. And while there are many ways to go about doing this, a unique strategy emerged in the modern Jujutsu Kaisen meta that only uses a rare technique to do so. So today we're going to look at the player Kento Nanami and break down his crit burst playstyle. In this video, I'll be analyzing the crit burst class who rolled the rare technique ratio. I'll be giving it a rating out of 10 based on how much I would recommend it to new players in the Jujutsu Kaisen servers. The categories that decide how well-rounded a build is, as per usual, fall into these 5 sections of the video: Rarity, abilities, stats, ultimates, skill ceilings, and matchups. However, for those who spec into specific abilities, it's possible to unlock a special category which Nanami does have, so stay tuned to find out what that is. Using a combination of extremely defined Jujutsu fundamentals as well as a unique technique, the crit burst class is a force to be reckoned with. So first things first, we'll dive into the background of this player. Alright, to get a better idea of how the crit burst class actually operates in the Jujutsu Kaisen story mode, we need to start at the beginning. The earliest gameplay we have of the crit burst player is the Season 2 patch update in the Hidden Inventory chapter. We see an early game Kento Nanami along with his duo player Haibara, although the next time we see the two of them, his duo is revealed to have been eliminated. Without his friend able to rejoin the game after being eliminated, the crit burst player slowly became more and more fed up with the game until he decided to give up on playing as a sorcerer entirely and switch over to the non-combat side of the game. And then he eventually got bored of that too, so he contacted the highest scoring player Satoru Gojo to rejoin the Jujutsu High Guild. And it was for the best that he did, because if he didn't, the community wouldn't have been able to witness any of the most innovative feats accomplished by this player. Feats like setting the first consecutive Black Flash record at 4, being one of 3 known players to break the top 25 with a rare technique, and beating the absolute fucking shit out of the bitch-ass build, the Miracle Reserve build. In the story mode, there are 3 distinct boss fights the crit burst player participates in. The first is against the Soul Breaker, where we play as the crit burst player himself. The second is with the Soul Striker, with the crit burst player as a tag team character. And lastly, against the Water Spirit in a party with Framelock V1 and the Min-Max build. After the latter boss fight, however, the Fire Spirit logs on to find his party member freshly eliminated and quickly posts up to get his get back. The crit burst player, while already injured, gets hit with the primary ability Disaster Flame. But due to his high defense, we get one last cutscene. Which was ultimately punctuated in the original fight with the Soulbreaker class coming out from camping and draining his health live on stream as well as in front of the Soul Striker. When it comes to rarity, the ratio technique is easily classified as a rare technique. You don't need any qualifying conditions, and while the technique isn't centered around battle, the ease at which you can dish out DPS can easily be applied in battle. It does require close range to apply, but the ratio technique is still considered a rare because it's not too hard to imagine a use case for it. This is definitely a huge plus for this build in my book, as rare technique builds are by far some of the most achievable for beginners. Now, for a grade 1 sorcerer, these stats are pretty impressive. Most notably, of course, is his defense stat, which even as a base is still higher than average. Now, I am also going to say that these stats are easily overcome by special grade players. It's not common for them to appear in your playthrough, but you are by no means on the higher end of players in terms of stats. Having above average stats in general is all you'll really need, but for the same reasons that his duo member was eliminated, having extra stat points will never really hurt. That said, he does also divert a handful of points into weapon handling, but we'll get into that aspect later. For now, we're just going to get into the passive abilities provided by this kit. 7-3 sight is one of the most important abilities to this build. Similarly to Ultimate Mechamaru, if you hold down middle click, you'll zoom in on your target. For this ability though, when you hold it on a target, the game will break down the opponent's various body parts into 10 different segments with a target appearing on either the 7th or 3rd bar ticks. The player can't control exactly where they appear, but that won't particularly matter too much as it will generally appear in vital positions. Overtime is actually a custom ability granted to the crit burst player by the game's engine and not from any other skill tree. Self-imposed packs in the Binding Vow engine allows a player to receive a new ability or alter current ones they possess. For the crit burst class, every time he's about to enter a session of work with designated hours, he's allowed to activate the overtime clause. If activated, the game will force him to impose a 10 through 20% debuff to his baseline cursed energy in this allotted time frame. If he's still working by the time his window's over, the passive ability will kick in and give him double the amount of cursed energy he sacrificed during work hours. So if he took a 10% cursed energy cut during work hours, if he goes into overtime, the game's engine will double that to give him 20 and then add it back to his cursed energy pool. So he will now be able to use his full 100% along with an extra 10% bonus. And something that a lot of people don't realize is that this ability will not deactivate until your mission is complete in some form. As long as you're still recognized to be in combat with an opponent or their party members, then you will perpetually hold on to that cursed energy bonus. Cursed Energy Mastery is a passive ability that few players are actually able to unlock. Cursed Energy Mastery only comes to specific players that are able to engage a part of the physics engine in the Jujutsu Kaisen system, the Black Flash mechanic. A Black Flash is when a curse user strikes someone, but within 0.000001 seconds of that attack landing, the user's cursed energy is applied. When done correctly, this will cause the game to lag, making the cursed energy flash black and adding a 2.5 damage knockback exponential multiplier to the one blow. After this is done, you will obtain the zone state in which all cursed energy abilities won't require the manual input of cursed energy reinforcement and instead become automatic. After the battle, you will then have Cursed Energy Mastery, which from then on will improve your cursed energy control. This ability will kick in every time you engage in battle, but know that the time window in which Cursed Energy Mastery will keep reinforcement on tightens when you get in the zone again. So even if you have this ability, it's still worth it to land another Black Flash in battle, as it will ensure you don't waste as much cursed energy as you would if you weren't. As I said in the story mode, Kento Nanami landed a Black Flash chain of 4 Black Flashes in a row, which set the initial record. But this is far from the first time he used that ability. He's actually so talented in his use of cursed energy that he's well known even among those above him on the leaderboard for being one of the best at landing Black Flashes. As of right now, he's only been matched in proficiency in cursed energy by the V1 Soul Striker. Cursed Energy Reinforcement is the basic primary ability that all sorcerers receive by default. When unlocking the Jujutsu skill tree, this is actually the first ability that you'll unlock. With this primary ability, you'll be able to guard an attack using cursed energy by holding down right trigger. While Nanami isn't one of the very few players to go far enough down the path to unlock max manipulation, he is by far one of the most talented players when it comes to utilization of this ability. So much so that he can completely nullify damage if he needs to, which I want to highlight is not common in the slightest. It costs a decent amount of cursed energy to do so, but for most sorcerers they can only mitigate damage, not completely nullify it. So while this may be basic for most players, for the crit burst player it's almost an entirely different ability. Also with Cursed Energy Mastery, this makes you a monster in combat. Ratio Crit is the most common ability you'll be using to strike your opponents. Ironically, even more so than Cursed Energy Reinforcement, even though it's so powerful in this kit. When 7-3 sight is applied, if the player manages to strike the designated zone, the game will apply a 5 times exponential multiplier to that one blow, which to put in perspective is 2 times the multiplier of a Black Flash. But do keep in mind that damage is limited to that designated area, whereas Black Flash just generally drains the health pool. Even still, a well-placed ratio crit resulting in an instant KO is not an uncommon thing. Even on players objectively stronger than you, if they don't know to apply more cursed energy to guard from your technique, things can easily get dicey if they don't have the RCT passive. This ability is the reason why this build has one of the highest DPS outputs for close combat fighters. Each hit that they land is almost a guaranteed loss of a limb, which will inflict bleed out, slowness, and a whole host of other issues that just make hacking away at health so much easier. In the case of Cursed Spirits, it's not as cut and dry due to the Cursed Attributes passive, but can still be very dangerous. Ratio Collapse is actually an extremely creative application of the ratio technique as well as Cursed Energy Reinforcement. Even though Nanami hasn't unlocked max manipulation, having gone so far down the skill tree, he is able to utilize some similar perks. So for those who didn't understand the exact mechanics of this ability, I'll try to break it down for you as simply as I can. I say that because I can assure you that I didn't understand it either. Basically, the passive ability 7-3, as long as you have the Cursed Energy to back it up, has no size limit on what you can designate. So with this in mind, Ratio Collapse begins by enlarging 7-3 vision to fit over a vast area. With Ratio Crit, that target is then struck and destroyed with Cursed Energy. But with that same Cursed Energy from Ratio Crit, the falling debris is infused and suspended mid-air using the same principles as the Double Jump passive ability. You will then have a brief time period to retreat before the Cursed Energy runs out and all debris comes crashing to the floor. Now, damage will vary depending on the size of the debris, but in general can be a very potent move, even akin to some ultimates. Now, before we continue to the special category, I would like to thank today's sponsor, you guys. As always, I'm incredibly grateful to all the support you guys give these videos, as well as all the members and patrons we have that keep the show going. Patrons recently got an Anime 101 exclusive video, so if you're at all interested in the perks you unlock when becoming a patron, I highly suggest that you check it out. Like I said before, patrons and members are really the only reason I can keep doing this, and I've still got a long way to go. Something that I haven't announced that I've been meaning to is that this channel officially has a merch shop where you can purchase the JJK pixel art on it. Right now I believe it's only shipping within the US. I'm working on international shipping at the moment, but if you are in the US and that sounds interesting, link is in the description. But if all of that is too much for you, know that just liking, subbing, or honestly being here to watch these videos helps me more than you can even imagine. So if you'd like, I'll open up the shop to help you out with your playthrough. Just comment whichever item you'd like and I'll heart your comment to lock it in. Anywho, you got a video to get back to. The special category unlocked by the Crit Burst class is the Weapon Special category. And there's a distinct reason why I haven't made a weapon short on this. This weapon is absolute garbage when used outside of this kit. The uncommon weapon Blunt Cleaver is one of the most unorthodox weapons out there. It intentionally removes the sharp end, thus bringing the melee down to just 2, which is objectively worse than just punching. So by itself, you have negative reasons to be using this weapon. For the Crit Burst kit, however, the qualities of the blade begin to shine through. With the 7:3 ratio technique, actually having a sharp cleaver is completely meaningless. Since the damage multiplier on the force is so high, the added slice damage of a blade is negligible. So instead of a sharp end, this kit opts to dull it instead. Optically counterintuitive at first, until you realize that with a dull end you maximize the surface area, which simultaneously allows you to more easily strike the 73 hitbox as well as apply your technique across a wider surface. You also get the added leverage of swinging a weapon instead of using a basic fist. And there is also a lowered weapon handling requirement since there is no potential self-damage if used wrong. Very, and I mean very, niche, but all things considered, very practical and extremely easy to craft. Now be warned for this next part because this does get into leaked gameplay. This is your official spoiler warning. There is actually a variation of this weapon that comes pre-equipped with the ratio technique. When a cursed weapon is used in conjunction with a technique after a number of uses not known to the player, you can reforge the technique of the weapon itself. Most players don't realize this because they continue to use the weapon in combination with their technique and never really pick up the fact that it has a second quality. It's only ever really noticed when another player picks it up and uses it. This variation of the Blunt Cleaver has an epic rarity because while it is definitely rare to find a weapon so specific, it is also very much craftable. The Crit Burst build in all honesty has one of the lowest skill floors in the game. Similarly to Soul Striker V1 and the Beam Spam build, you really only have to focus on cursed energy manipulation. Rare techniques are always the best for this because they allow you to focus on your fundamentals while also receiving the added boost of a relatively simple ability. The 7:3 ratio technique doesn't add anything to your playstyle, only allowing you to crit more often, which, as long as you remember to apply it, is just generally helpful. The only thing I would say might take getting used to is the overtime binding vow. For me at least, it always throws me off because I'm not doing as much damage as I think I'm doing even if I put the enemy in back-to-back combos. It's something that, while subtly, will still affect your playstyle. In general though, it's a low skill floor. And as is usual with most rare techniques, looking at you Boogie Woogie, the skill ceiling isn't that high either. Basic cursed energy manipulation only gets you so far, and while it's very powerful, it doesn't reward mastery all that often. Which is one of the bigger drawbacks to this kit because a complaint for most players in battle is that some techniques can just do more than theirs can. This is sadly one of the ones that won't take you very far in comp. By far, one of your worst matchups is range. You are purely a close combat fighter, and unlike Soul Striker V1 through V3, you don't have the insanely high speed stat to close distances to make up for it. If anyone can fight you at range successfully and whittle down your health, you have little chance of winning. Also, as we see in the story mode, there is very much a strict level at which you can fight at. This technique, despite being used by a member of Jujutsu High, is much more effective against sorcerer players than cursed spirit players. I will say that cursed spirits under your level can still be a one-shot in some cases if not a 3-shot max, but if they're above your level, it's going to be hard. The rate at which high level curses regenerate is just enough to deal with your crit burst, which forces this into being a battle of attrition, which in general always leans towards the cursed spirit player. Cursed spirit players at this level will also in general have extremely powerful or complex techniques that will be hard for you to thwart with your rare technique. Now, how would I rate this build based on how much I would recommend it to new players in the Jujutsu Kaisen servers? For the Crit Burst build, I would give it a solid 7 out of 10. These types of builds in general are just good for beginner builds. A technique rare enough to be powerful, but not rare enough to make you infinitely roll, and a build that gets its power from focusing on the fundamentals. The 3 points deducted are for the lack of a skill ceiling and the easy range counter. Sadly, those flaws are particularly glaring, but even still, this build is by far one of the best for beginners. It's unfortunate to see, but a lot of modern builds don't focus on pure DPS like they used to. But in a few emerging players, I see a lot of potential. Pixel Dory. You clip him from here.